Hello and welcome to this lecture, where we'll be adding pagination functionality to our blog's front page. Because a blog usually has many blog posts, we will add a way for the visitors to navigate through the blog post without scrolling through one long page, as is currently the case on our blog. Note that I have added a number of test blog posts to my database so that we have enough data to test the pagination feature. I have added an SQL script to this lecture that you can use to import this test data into your own database if you would like. Let's first go into our post repository import class and update the fetch method to return a paginator instead of an array of post objects. So let's open it up. We'll also add a page parameter which represents the page that we are requesting. So I'll do that as the first thing. Now, in order to use pagination, Zen Framework provides a convenient class for handling this, which takes an adapter which is responsible for fetching the data to be displayed for the current page. So in our case, because we are extracting the post from our database, we're going to use a database adapter for this. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. So let me just clean up this code a bit because we're going to use a different approach. We are no longer going to loop through our result set. Instead, I'm going to keep this for now. And I'm going to instantiate a paginator adapter of the type send /paginator /adapter, and in this namespace we have a few adapters available, and I'm going to use the db select, and I can pass in our instance of select that we instantiated up here, and I'll also pass in our database adapter as well as our result set. So the paginator is going to use our hydrating result set, which is also taking care of mapping a given database row to a post entity. Next, I'll instantiate the paginator itself, which is of the type send /paginator /paginator. And I'm going to pass in our pagination adapter that we just created. And I'll just set two properties on this object. First, the current page number, which is the argument for this method. So this is the page that the paginator is going to retrieve from our adapter, in this case database. I'm also going to define how many items we want to retrieve for each page by setting the setItemCount per page variable. And I'm just going to return this paginator. So as you can see, now we're returning a paginator instead of an array of post objects. So let's just quickly go to our interface and update this documentation as well as method name. So I'm going to add the page argument. I'm just going to say, let's return send paginator /paginator, and this is of the type integer. Let's do the same with our blog service interface as well as blog service import class. So I'll just generate this once again. Let's see, a bit easier. Whoops, I forgot the page argument, and I'll just generate this again. So again, send paginator, and it's an integer. And I'll go into our blog service import class, and I'm just going to regenerate this implementation. And we're going to return this post repository fetch, and we're going to pass the page as an argument. Next, for our pagination to work, we need to keep track of which page the user is requesting. We'll do this within the URL, so let's create a route to allow this. So I'll go into our blog's configuration file. I'll make it a child root of the blog root so that we are extending the root of /blog up here. It will be of the type segment because we want to add a dynamic URL fragment. So let's begin implementing this. I'll call it paged. And like I said, it will be of the type segment. Let's pass it some options, first of which is going to be the root. And let's use the URL structure /blog from the parent root /page/page, which is the page number. I'll just add a constraint to the page segment that it has to be a number, so I'm going to use a regular expression here, and I'm going to use some defaults saying that the controller will be the blog /controller/index, and the action will be the index action. So if we request this page, we have to specify which page we're interested in, but we also want the front page of our blog to be available without specifying a page. So I'm just going to go up here to our main root, our parent root, and I'm going to add a default for our page to 1. So if no page is specified, then it's just going to be the first page, which is what we want. Let's open our index controller and make a few small changes. First, let's make sure that we call the fetch method, and we also have to pass in the number of the requested page. So I'll just remove the all here. To pass in the requested page, I'll use the params controller plugin. Remember that this controller plugin lets us access parameters within roots, query parameters, HTTP headers, and so on. In this case, we'll be fetching the page segment from our root and pass it to the fetch method, like so. I will also change the name of the variable that we send to the view to paginator. Now we should be ready to move on to our view scripts and display the posts as well as the pagination links. So let's open up our index.phml file. To display the posts for the given page, we actually don't have to do anything except modify the variable name that we changed from posts to paginator. The reason for this is that the paginator class implements the iterator aggregate SPL interface, and that's why we can just loop through the paginator like this, and it will display each item. This is all it takes to display the posts, but let's also add a pagination control that lets the user navigate between the various pages. To do this, we'll use a view helper named pagination control. And I'm just going to write a small block of code here, and I will explain this in just a moment. Echo this pagination control, this paginator. like so. So this view helper invokes a partial, which is essentially just a view script that is responsible for rendering part of a view. For example, we could use a partial to display each of our posts on the current page. The pagination control view helper then makes useful variables available within the partial that can then be used to display the pagination control, but we'll take a closer look at that in just a moment. The first argument to our view helper is an instance of a paginator. The second one is the scrolling style, which defines which pages will be available within the partial, and that makes it easier for us to render different styles of paginators. The possible values are all, elastic, jumping, and sliding. For now, I'll use the sliding type that positions the current page in the center of the page range, as in Yahoo's search results, for instance. The next argument is the name of the partial. I will get back to this in a minute. The last argument is an array of additional variables that we would like to make available within our partial. In this case, we're going to add the name of the root for the current controller action, because then we can make use of the URL view helper within the partial to generate the links to each page. This way we can make the partial dynamic and independent of which page it's used on. Let's add the pagination partial now. Because we're passing in a name of a partial, we have to specify in the configuration where the corresponding script file is located. Because this is not specific to the blog module, we'll add this to the application module's configuration. So let's open the module.config.php file of the application module. And we'll add an entry to this template map. What we do here is to just map our partial name to the template script so that the view resolver can find it. So I'm going to use the same name as we did in here. So I can just copy this and use it as the name. And now we just have to specify the location of our partial. And I'm going to say /view/partial/pagination.php. So now we just have to implement this partial. So I'll create a new directory for our partials, and I'll add a file named pagination.php. I'll just paste in the code that we need to generate the pagination links, and then I'll just briefly walk through the code because it's quite a lot of code in here. So what happens in this partial is that here we check if there's a previous page, and if so, we generate a link to this previous page. Otherwise, we just add a text that is not a hyperlink that the user cannot click on, because if there's no previous page, then it doesn't make sense to have a clickable link. And in here we just loop through all of the pages that are in range. So this could be the pages from 1 to 10, for instance. And we just make a check that if the current page in the loop is not the current one, then we'll add a link, and otherwise we'll just display the text, so not a clickable link. And as with the previous link, we just add a link to the next page if it's available. Otherwise, we just add a text that the user cannot click on. So that's all. Let's go to the browser and ensure that everything works as expected. So I'll just refresh this page. And let's see. As you can see here, now we have a pagination control. And let's see if we can navigate from one page to another. And as I navigated to the third page, you will see that I cannot click on this. If I go to the fifth page, you will see that the next link is no longer clickable. In the URL, you will see here that our URL is different. we appended /page/ and then the page segment, which is 5 in this case. So this is changing, and this is what allows us to dynamically change the page. But let's just try to remove this, just to make sure that everything works if we don't specify a page. And it does, because remember that we set a default value of 1 for the page within our parent root in our configuration file. So while the paginator control does not look so pretty right now, it's fully functional, and we'll get back to making it look better in a future lecture. So until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture.